जो हमने पैंडेमिक के टाइम पे और रादर पोस्ट पैंडेमिक जो हमने इन्फ्लेशन सर्ज देखा था अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड, एंड कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ थिंग्स वर एक्चुअली एट वर्क एट दैट पॉइंट इन टाइम. उस लेवल से तो हम काफ़ी हद तक मतलब मॉडरेट हो
India.
चुके हैं अक्रॉस, नॉट जस्ट इन इंडिया बट अक्रॉस द ग्लोब. सो आर इन्फ्लेशन एट वन पॉइंट इन टाइम पीक्ड एट अबाउट 8%. अब हम
Yeah.
4.5 के करीब है. तो it's a significant climb down. Small caps also again are best bought at the time when there is indifference in the market. लोगों को पसंद नहीं है, लोग रिस्क अवर्जन मोड में है, उनको कैपिटल कमिट नहीं करना है, या आप बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स देखते हैं. दैट टेंड्स टू बी द फर्स्ट, दैट टेंड्स टू बी अ फार बेटर इन्वेस्टमेंट opportunity than trying to invest when momentum is at its fullest. There is nothing like a 5-year SIP or a 10-year SIP right now. I mean, we have to talk in terms of decadal SIPs, if at all, because that is the journey that we have in front of us to cover. And so it's a long way off. Is essentially what I'm trying to say. Therefore, I've never thought of SIPs from an exit perspective. So financial freedom achieve करने के लिए, like as I said, you need to start early, and it doesn't matter with what amount, small amounts, or you start with. And that is the reason why actually is, when you have SIP investments which can be done with what, a minimum $100. आप कुछ भी कर लो, you will confront bad times in the market, or bad stocks, or bad investment choices that you can't avoid. The best of investors have gone through it. One thing that I clearly comes to my mind is manage your risks. Okay, you,
Yeah.
you should be aware as to what is the kind of risk that you want to take for yourself.
हाय एवरीवन, मेरा नाम नम्रता अरोरा है एंड वेलकम बैक टू म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात. म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात में हम ग्लोबल और इंडियन इकोनॉमिक कंडीशंस, कमोडिटीज, स्टॉक मार्केट, म्यूचुअल फंड्स, इन सब के बारे में डिस्कस करते हैं और हर एपिसोड में वी गेट समवन विद अ लॉट ऑफ नॉलेज इन दिस पर्टिकुलर स्पेस. तो आज भी हमारे साथ ही समवन वेरी रिनाउंड इन द म्यूचुअल फंड इंडस्ट्री. टुडे वी हैव विद अस मिस्टर ताहिर बादशाह. ही इज द चीफ इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑफिसर CIO of Invesco Mutual Fund. Tahir has over 29 years of experience in the Indian equity market. In his role as Chief Investment Officer, Tahir is responsible for the equity and fixed income investment function at the firm. He has been with Invesco Asset Management India for over 6 years. In his previous role with Motilal Oswal Asset Management as Head of Equities, he was responsible for leading the equity investment team. In the past, he has also worked with companies like Kotak Mahindra Investment Advisors, ICICI Prudential Asset Management, Alliance Capital Asset Management, etc. Mr. Taher Badshah holds a Masters in Management Studies (MMS) with specialization in finance from SP Jain Institute of Management and a BE degree in electronics from the University of Mumbai. Hi everyone and welcome back to Mutual Funds की बात. Thank you so much for joining us today. हर एपिसोड में हम ट्राई करते हैं कि हम आपके लिए एक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग स्पीकर को लेके आए who can answer all the questions that we have lined up, and these are the questions जो आप सब की तरफ से हमें मिलते हैं. So I do hope we have a wonderful session today because we have a very wonderful speaker with us, Mr. Taher Badshah. Hello sir, welcome to Mutual Funds की बात. Tahir is the Chief Investment Officer at Invesco Mutual Funds, and we are truly honored to have him here with us today. So Tahir, हमने आपके लिए बहुत सारे questions line up किए हैं, and I do hope to I'm sure हमारे investors को आपके answer से बहुत ज़्यादा perspective मिलेगा. So let's start with the first one, and हमने देखा है कि बहुत सारी जो Western economies हैं जो इंडिया से भी बहुत बड़ी हैं, they have not been able to come out of the impact of the 2008 financial crisis. और अगर देखा जाए तो बहुत सारे देशों में कंट्रैक्शन भी हो रहा है इन टर्म्स ऑफ वर्किंग एज पॉपुलेशन. तो आपके ओपिनियन में इंडिया हैज़ अ वाइब्रेंट यंग पॉपुलेशन. तो ये जो यंग पॉपुलेशन है, डू यू थिंक इट विल कंट्रीब्यूट टू इंडिया बिकमिंग द थर्ड लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बाय 2029?
So now to begin with, I mean, yeah, look, this is clearly one of the most important competitive advantages that India as a nation has. I mean, हम companies की competitive advantages की बात करते हैं, लेकिन this is a competitive advantage that we at least as of now, जो हमारी life cycle है, country की life cycle है, nation की life cycle है,
Yeah.
उसमें clearly that is something which is in our arsenal, and we will take advantage of that. I think ये एक ऐसी चीज है जो basically has been seen in other countries also. तो हमने
Yeah.
यूएस में भी वही देखा है. We've seen it in other nations at various points in time in their life cycle. जैसे जापान में एक समय में देखा गया था, which is now completely on the other side of the table. And very recently we had even seen it in recently, by which I mean in the last 3 or 4 decades, हमने चाइना में भी वही जर्नी देखी थी. तो आई थिंक एक कंट्री की हर एक कंट्री की लाइफ साइकिल में वो एक ऐसा 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 मौका आता है विच यू हैव टू एक्चुअली टेक एडवांटेज ऑफ. एंड मोर पर्टिकुलरली इंडिया में और भी ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है बिकॉज इट इज़ वन ऑफ द लार्जेस्ट population countries in the world as well, one of the largest among the top two, top three countries in the world in terms of
Yeah.
the number of absolute number of people as well. So uh, हर एक न केवल इंडियंस की लेकिन बाकी देशों के लोगों की भी नजरें इंडिया पे टिकी हुई है. एंड obviously we have to make the best of it. So I think see the the in the wealth of nations, basically the resources of the nation, obviously the population, and within the population the younger pool of people,
Yeah.
और उसकी संख्या एक इम्पॉर्टेंट मायने रखती है. एंड obviously that is the energy which will contribute to the growth of the country. So I don't think, I mean, it is quite a no brainer, I would say. उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा दिमाग लगाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. पर आई थिंक मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग इज़ कि हम इस एनर्जी को किस तरीके से क्रिस्टलाइज करते हैं और किस तरीके से एनर्जाइज करते हैं. एंड उसके लिए प्लेटफॉर्म हम बना पाते हैं कि नहीं बना पाते. आई थिंक दैट इज़ वेयर other countries in the past have been successful in channelizing the energies in the right direction at the time when that energy is available in front of us. So I think India के लिए challenge वो है.
Okay.
Opportunity तो definitely in front of us is very very clear.
So you think we are on track to becoming the third largest economy in the next, say, 5 years?
Well, I think अगर मतलब if you look at the global configuration today, it is very difficult. I mean, at least on this planet, there is no other country, as obviously, which can which can take that position at this stage. So clearly, it is the era of India, but and we are there. We are not. We are, top three is not something which is very difficult. I mean, we are maybe among the top five, top six. Especially if you look at it from a purchasing power parity basis, तो हम already top three में आ गए हैं.
Yeah.
लेकिन even if you have to probably think of it in terms of absolute size, I think it's a clear path. And इसमें ये है कि मतलब I don't even think it is a function of क्या political configuration होगा, who will
Yeah.
be at the helm, all those things. वो भी एक तरीके से मतलब मायने नहीं रखता, क्योंकि this is the path that you are going to take. You will see this advantage at least for the next 25 or 30 years. India too will reach at some stage a situation where the population will start aging off, and the the structure will change. But
Okay.
as of now, that demographic dividend या जैसे जैसे कहते हैं, that is वो clearly हमारे सामने है exploit करने के लिए. तो I fully agree with you, and I don't have any doubt in my mind that we can get to that position
Wow.
in both relative as well as absolute terms.
Perfect. So I mean, it's a very positive indication then in terms
Oh,
of
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल. Positive, and मतलब it can only be imagined in terms of what kind of as a result of that, न केवल in terms of our own lifestyles and our own lives and
yeah,
livelihoods, but even in terms of investment opportunities, what this can mean in
sure.
the coming decade, if not more, for all of us who are on this call, or who all are hearing this conversation कि भाई ये तो मतलब so I think that is the important thing कि आप इस opportunity जो अपने सामने unfold होने जा रही है. And I think we all should feel very lucky that we are there to probably witness this, God
Yeah.
willing, this opportunity as it is unfolding in front of us.
Sure. Wonderful. Okay. So Tahir, let me ask you one more question. I think inflation एक ऐसी चीज़ है जो हम सबके लिए बहुत बड़ी concern रही है last year, and of course we have been able to control it to a large extent. लेकिन देखा जाए तो इंडिया का जो retail inflation rate है वो जून में it was close to 4.81% because of course the surge in food prices. जो रिवाइज्ड इन्फ्लेशन के कंपैरिजन में थोड़ा ज़्यादा था, विच वाज अबाउट 4.31%। तो आपके ओपिनियन में जब हम इन्वेस्ट करते हैं एक्विटीज़ में, तो ये इन्फ्लेशनरी टाइम्स में इन्वेस्ट करने का फ़ायदा होता है, नहीं होता है? एंड एट द सेम टाइम अगर देखा जाए तो अभी सदर्न रीजन में, इन द सदर्न पार्ट ऑफ द कंट्री, मानसून उतने अच्छे नहीं रहे हैं। डू यू थिंक इसकी वजह से फूड इन्फ्लेशन विल कंटिन्यू टू स्टे हाई, एंड इसका जो है मार्केट पे क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा?
सो नम्रता, एक्चुअली आप देखो तो जो इन्फ्लेशन की थोड़ी लंबी ट्रेजेक्टरी अगर आप देखें तो, स्पेशली आई एम नॉट रेफरिंग टू द लास्ट 5 years, नो एम आई रेफरिंग टू द लास्ट टू मंथ्स आइदर, बट आई एम जस्ट सेइंग दैट अगर आप इन्फ्लेशन की प्रक्रिया पिछले एक सवा साल की देखें तो एक्चुअली वी हैव स्टार्टेड टू सी मॉडरेशन ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन। जो हमने पैंडेमिक के टाइम पे और रादर पोस्ट पैंडेमिक जो हमने इन्फ्लेशन सर्ज देखा था अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड, एंड combination of things were actually at work at that point in time. उस लेवल से तो हम काफ़ी हद तक मतलब मॉडरेट हो चुके हैं अक्रॉस, नॉट जस्ट इन इंडिया बट अक्रॉस द ग्लोब। सो आर इन्फ्लेशन एट वन पॉइंट इन टाइम पीक्ड एट अबाउट 8%, अब हम 4.5 के करीब है। तो इट्स अ सिग्निफिकेंट क्लाइम डाउन। यूएस में देखें तो 9% से अब वो 3% पे आ गए हैं, एंड इट इज़ द country by country. I mean, if you see most of the developed as well as developing markets have seen a significant moderation in inflation. So बट हाँ, आपने जैसे वो आंकड़े बताए कि फॉर द लास्ट मंथ और सो वी हैव probably seen bit of an increase, and this is obviously led by food inflation. Agri inflation थोड़ा दिक्कत देता ही है at several points in time, हमने पास में भी देखा है, और अब पिछले कुछ हफ्तों में भी हमने we've seen specific vegetable prices or tomato prices, etc. So there are these kind of idiosyncrasies which keep coming all once in a while. बट थोड़ा मीडियम टर्म पिक्चर अगर इन्फ्लेशन का देखें तो मुझे लगता है कि सी आई थिंक देर इज there is a good possibility that India's inflation trajectory in general will be of a somewhat lesser magnitude compared to what it has been historically. हमारे लिए मतलब 7-8% इन्फ्लेशन बहुत कॉमन हुआ करता था, एंड इट वाज बिकॉज ऑफ अ कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ रीजन। सप्लाई साइड बॉटलनेक्स हुआ करते थे, इनएफिशिएंसीज इन द सिस्टम हुआ करती थी, प्रोडक्टिविटी हैज़ बीन an issue. It is still an issue, but it is
Yeah,
getting better. Use
yeah,
of technology is much better than what it used to be in the past in various things. Um,
sure.
न केवल एग्री रिलेटेड प्रोडक्ट्स में, बट बहुत सारी बाकी सारी मैन्युफैक्चर्ड गुड्स में भी हमने वो सिचुएशन देखी थी। दूसरी एक चीज़ जो हमारे लिए हमेशा से एक प्रॉब्लम रहती है इज़ इम्पोर्टेड इन्फ्लेशन। जो इन्फ्लेशन हम बाहर से चीज़ें जो हम इंपोर्ट करते हैं, स्पेशली थिंग्स लाइक क्रूड
Yeah,
ऑयल ऑब्वियसली, सेकंड इज इलेक्ट्रॉनिक गुड्स, थर्ड इज इवन डिफेंस रिलेटेड, जो तीन चार
true.
जो बड़े बड़े हिस्से हैं ऑफ द इंपोर्ट
Yeah,
बास्केट। तो उसमें भी अगर हम स्ट्रक्चरली देखें तो देर इज़ एन इम्प्रूवमेंट। वाइल एनर्जी या ऑयल प्राइसेस का हम ज़्यादा हम उस वी कांट इन्फ्लुएंस दैट बियॉन्ड अ पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट, वो हमारे कंट्रोल में नहीं है, हमारे बस में नहीं है। लेकिन वहाँ पे भी कुछ हद तक मतलब यूज़ ऑफ रिन्यूएबल्स एंड नॉन कन्वेंशनल सोर्सेज ऑफ एनर्जी, जैसे जैसे विंड पावर, सोलर, दीज बिकम लॉट मोर रेलिवेंट।
true.
आई थिंक वो वहाँ पे भी एनर्जी इंटेंसिटी कुछ कम होने की पॉसिबिलिटी है। लेकिन अगर मैं उसके बारे में उसको छोड़ भी दूँ, साइड पे रख दूँ अगर मैं, लेकिन आप बाकी कुछ जो बड़े कंपोनेंट्स हैं, आप उसके बारे में अगर हम सोचें तो डिफेंस फॉर एग्जांपल, और इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कंपोनेंट्स, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक गुड्स, मोबाइल फोन्स, लैपटॉप्स, जो हम भारी संख्या में पिछले कुछ सालों से इंपोर्ट करते आ रहे हैं और यूज़ करते आ रहे हैं। आई थिंक इन दैट वी आर obviously seeing a very strong change in through indigenization. तो अभी बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब we now know that most of the phones, many of the phones are actually manufactured in India. A made in India label is there on the back of many of the mobile phones that we buy day in and day out. Defense में government has started a very strong drive in the last 2 years to indigenize under the Make in India concept. So I think there is a possibility that in general inflation की जो tendency है और variations है या volatility है इंडिया में should be lesser compared to what it has been in the past decades. हाँ, बट वी कैन ऑलवेज गेट मंथ ऑन मंथ वॉलिटिलिटी, कुछ सीजन खराब होगी, कुछ मानसून का कभी कुछ प्रॉब्लम आएगा. हालांकि मानसून के बारे में भी हम अगर सोचें तो मार्केट्स ने ये एक्सपेक्टेशन बना के रखी थी एट द स्टार्ट ऑफ द ईयर कि एल नीनो आएगा, देयर माइट बी इवन ड्राउट काइंड ऑफ कंडीशंस एंड थिंग्स माइट नॉट बी एज गुड, थिंग्स माइट बी क्वाइट बैड ऑन द मानसून फ्रंट. एक ड्राउट का प्रोस्पेक्ट करीब करीब बाजार ने, मार्केट ने अंदाज़ा लगा लिया था, और गवर्नमेंट एजेंसीज आर ऑल्सो स्टार्टेड टू प्रिपेयर for those kind of eventualities. But I think, of course, we started on a rough note in June, but we also know that July में monsoons across the country have been very good. In fact, it has converted us from deficit to surplus. हालांकि सीजन अभी तक खत्म नहीं हुई है, we still have a couple of months to go, but initial reading is that it is not as bad as what it was supposed to be. It remains to be seen as to how good it gets, but at least वो एक जो फेयर फैक्टर था या सेंटिमेंटली जो एक ड्राउट का प्रोस्पेक्ट, एल नीनो का बड़ा असर होना, वो एक जो प्रोस्पेक्ट था वो शायद आई थिंक न्यूट्रलाइज हो चुका है. तो आई इवन फ्रॉम अ नियर टर्म पॉसिबिलिटी आई फील इन्फ्लेशन शुड बी समवॉट मोर कंट्रोल्ड. और एक ग्रोइंग इकोनॉमी लाइक इंडिया के लिए 4 से 6% का बैंड जो, या 2 से 6% का बैंड जो आरबीआई ने अपने लिए सेट किया है, well, I think it's a reasonable band of inflation if an economy wants to or aspires to grow at somewhere around the 6-7% mark, if not higher.
But Tahir, coming back to my question, how important is investing in times like these when inflation is maybe on a rise?
Yes, yes. So, yeah, I mean, you well, at a very simplistic level, आप जब inflation is high, that is a very good time to invest actually, क्योंकि उस समय क्या होता है कि there is always pressure on the market. मार्केट्स में थोड़ा डर का माहौल रहता है, परचेजिंग पावर कम हो जाती है, और उससे जुड़े हुए मतलब यू सी problems like interest rates rising as a result of that, which also adds to the overall cost element. लेकिन in those kind of cycles markets provide good entry points, especially अगर आप कुछ लंबे अरसे के लिए अगर आप इन्वेस्टमेंट होराइजन के बारे में सोचते हैं, दो
Okay,
साल 3 साल मे बी इवन मोर, so I think it is better to invest at times when interest rates are high rather than interest rates are low. I'm not saying that we should not invest in times when interest rates are low, but interest rates are high is the time when you get good, better investment opportunities.
opportunities.
और
Sure.
आपको वैल्यूएशन भी अच्छे मिल जाते हैं, आपके लिए जो डाउनसाइड रिस्क है वो प्रोटेक्ट हो जाता है. लेकिन आपके लिए वेटिंग पीरियड हालांकि थोड़ा बढ़ जाता है, क्योंकि यू वेट फॉर दैट इवेंचुअल साइकिल टू टर्न इन योर फेवर, इन्फ्लेशन टू कम डाउन. साथ ही साथ लगे हाथों अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट्स भी नरम हो जाते हैं तो देन वैल्यूएशन स्टार्ट मूविंग इन द ऑपोजिट डायरेक्शन, बिकॉज इंटरेस्ट रेट्स और इन्फ्लेशन का मार्केट्स के साथ कंप्लीटली इनवर्स कोरिलेशन होता है, जैसे हम कहते हैं. सो
Sure. Okay.
I think that is how the broad investment philosophy uh, uh, can be made to work.
Perfect. Sure. Thank you so much. So, okay, Tahir, now we'll move on to the different categories of funds. So, हम थोड़े
जी.
funds के बारे में बात करते हैं, अलग-अलग categories and different strategies we can employ to manage our funds. तो सबसे पहले एक interesting category की बात करते हैं. I think हम अपने सारे speakers से इस category के बारे में पूछते हैं because ये बहुत ही this is a category which many people are investing in, which is the small cap funds. स्मॉल कैप फंड्स ने करीब 4,170 और करोड़ का इन्फ्लो देखा इन द मंथ ऑफ जुलाई 23 कंपेयर टू जून जब 5,472 करोड़ का इन्फ्लोज हुआ था जस्ट इन द स्मॉल कैप कैटेगरी. हावेवर अगर देखा जाए तो ये फिर भी काफ़ी फेवरेट फंड्स हैं अमंगस्ट ऑल द इन्वेस्टर्स. लेकिन आपके ओपिनियन में आर देयर एनी इंडिकेटर्स की जो एज इन्वेस्टर्स हमें वॉच आउट करना चाहिए कि जो स्मॉल कैप फंड्स हैं, डू यू थिंक आर दे ओवर वैल्यूड? And in support of this argument, the fact that शायद small cap funds overvalued है, हमने देखा है कि काफ़ी AMCs ने one time investment small cap funds ने बंद कर दी हैं. तो is this something that we can take as a word of caution? So what do you think?
सो देखिए, स्मॉल कैप्स एक थोड़ी डिफिकल्ट सी एसेट क्लास ज़रूर है, स्पेशली इफ यू हैव टू टाइम देम, स्पेशली इफ यू हैव टू काइंड ऑफ थिंक ऑफ देम ओनली फ्रॉम अ 2-3 ईयर perspective. बट अगर आप लॉन्ग रेंज स्मॉल कैप इन्वेस्टर रहे हो और आप उसमें फाइव सेवन ईयर्स का एक जर्नी आपने अगर बिताया है, तो यू विल फाइंड दैट ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम स्मॉल कैप्स ऑलवेज टेंड टू give you uh, a couple of notches better returns than what you might probably get out of the larger enterprises or the more established enterprises in the country.
Okay.
It depends on your perspective. एक बात तो ये हो जाती है। हमने ये भी देखा है कि यू नो small caps obviously tend to be more volatile, especially over shorter periods of time. बट जनरली मेरी जहाँ तक समझ रही है और मेरे जहाँ तक मेरा एक्सपीरियंस रहा है वो द लास्ट सम इयर्स, स्मॉल कैप्स ऑल्सो अगेन आर बेस्ट बॉट एट द टाइम व्हेन देयर इज इनडिफरेंस इन द मार्केट। लोगों को पसंद नहीं है, लोग रिस्क अवर्जन मोड में है, उनको कैपिटल कमिट नहीं करना है, या आप बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स देखते हैं,
Yeah.
दैट टेंड्स टू बी द फर्स्ट दैट टेंड्स टू बी अ फार बेटर investment opportunity than trying to invest when momentum is at its fullest.
Sure.
Okay. The last good cycle, a very strong cycle that we saw in small caps was in somewhere between 2015, 16, and 2018. And 2018, then we started to see valuations reach stratospheric levels, significantly higher than the averages of small caps seen in the past. On this thing, investor psychology was at its peak as far as small caps was concerned. फिर ऑब्वियसली देन इट टेंड्स टू बिकम डिफिकल्ट प्रॉब्लम, बिकॉज आपके लिए रिस्क और डाउनसाइड दोनों ओपन हो जाते हैं। रिस्क और डाउनसाइड आएगा नहीं आएगा वो पता नहीं, लेकिन डेफिनेटली यू आर एक्सपोज टू दैट पॉसिबिलिटी दैट इफ anything goes wrong, then you are exposed, then your risk and your downside opens up. And that is exactly what happened in 2018. हमने थोड़ा got into the NBFC financial crisis, we had the ILFS related issue. तब से लेके अब तक मतलब we have not really seen a great rally as far as small caps is concerned. We did see a small spark sometime during the post COVID recovery, लेकिन उसके बाद I don't think we've seen a very very strong rally for a continuous length of time. uh, so even though in the recent 6 months or so, small caps have rallied well, हमने स्मॉल कैप और मिड कैप इंडेक्स में 20-22% की बढ़ोतरी
Yeah.
देखी है इन दिस कैलेंडर ईयर वर्सेस लेट्स से निफ्टी विच इज डन अबाउट 7-8%। बट 2 साल का अगर आप कैगर देखें, रिटर्न कैगर देखें, आई एम नॉट लुकिंग एट 3 years, but I'm looking at 2 years. Why I'm not looking at 3 years is because 3 years means actually you're going back to the pandemic low, 2020 जून जुलाई। तो आज से लेके अगर आप 3 साल पीछे जाते हो तो यू विल गेट इनटू दैट। सो उस वो वाले माहौल ऑफ द मार्केट से तो आपको डेफिनेटली अच्छा रिटर्न मिल देखने मिलेगा। लेकिन अगर आप 2 साल लेते हैं विच इज़ बेसिकली पोस्ट पैंडेमिक रिटर्न्स, तो देन द मिड कैप इंडेक्सेस आई थिंक रिटर्न अबाउट 18% CAGR, और स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स इज डन अबाउट 15%। लेकिन मिड कैप इंडेक्स का पोटेंशियल रिटर्न्स, या जब अच्छी साइकिल आती है 3-4-5 साल की, 3-4 साल की एक अच्छी साइकिल जब स्मॉल कैप्स में देखी गई है इन द पास्ट, तब आपके कंपाउंडेड रिटर्न्स करीब करीब 24 से 25% के बैंड में रहे हैं, कंपेयर टू 15% दैट वी हैव सीन इन द लास्ट 2 years। और ये 15% is after the 7-8 20% rally that we have seen in the current year, जो आपने जनवरी से लेके या फरवरी से लेके अब तक जो रैली देखी है स्मॉल कैप्स में 20-22%, उसको मिला के वी आर कमिंग टू 15% रिटर्न ओवर द लास्ट 2 years। मेरे कहने का मतलब ये है कि हमने रैली ज़रूर देखी है, लेकिन नो वे क्लोज टू द पोटेंशियल which small caps inherently as an asset class have within themselves to deliver, and what they have done or delivered in past cycles. तो उसके कंपैरिजन में तो वी आर स्टिल अ फेयरली लॉन्ग वे ऑफ। सेकेंड इज दैट माहौल देखना इम्पोर्टेंट है, और माहौल एज ऑफ नाउ, आई मीन देखिए, we have been somewhat positive. We have been positive on the small cap space almost since the start of this calendar year. और तभी ऐसा ही एक माहौल था, जैसे मैंने आपको समझाया कि इट इज बेस्ट, द बेस्ट टाइम इज टू बाय व्हेन स्मॉल कैप्स आर
Yeah.
ओवरलुक्ड एंड देयर इज नो इंटरेस्ट। तो कैलेंडर ईयर 22 में हमने देखा था कि स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स एक्चुअली had रिटर्न नेगेटिव 15%,
Yeah.
जबकि निफ्टी और मिड कैप इंडेक्स ने पॉजिटिव रिटर्न रिटर्न दिया था उस साल में। तो एक तरीके का इनडिफरेंस ऑलरेडी बिक्ट इन था इन द स्मॉल कैप स्पेस। इट हैड अंडर परफॉर्म, लोगों का नज़रिया टुवर्ड स्मॉल कैप्स वाज नेगेटिव, और सेंटिमेंट वाज नॉट दैट ग्रेट। दैट बिकेम अ वेरी गुड स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट, और वैल्यूएशन भी स्मॉल कैप में एक अच्छी तरह अच्छे लेवल पे आ गए थे, कंफर्टेबल लेवल पे आ गए थे। अब एक अच्छी डिसेंट सी रैली आई है, लेकिन फिर भी मैं कहूँगा कि इट इज़ द स्टार्ट ऑफ द साइकिल। आई थिंक इट इज़ गॉट इनफ जर्नी स्टिल टू कवर। एंड स्मॉल कैप्स और शायद आई वुड से इवन मिड कैप्स फॉर दैट मैटर, उनकी एक खूबी और एक ये होती है कि दे डू ऑलवेज डू वेल एट अ टाइम व्हेन द ओवरऑल डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमिक साइकिल जो होती है वो अच्छी होती है।
Yeah.
That is a good breeding ground for small caps to do well, small enterprises to do well, and even their valuations to become to go up. और ये इसलिए होता है क्योंकि स्मॉल एंटरप्राइजेज, मीडियम साइज एंटरप्राइजेज, दे टिपिकली आर more exposed or leveraged to the Indian domestic cycle, न कि the global investment cycle. So India, as I said, I mean, we are staring at a scenario where we believe that India's economic cycle will be a lot better in the next 5 years compared to what it has been in the prior 5 years.
Yeah.
So if that is the premise, and we are looking at a better economic cycle in general, it should be a good playground, it should be a good foundation, a good landscape for mid cap and small cap investing to prosper even further.
Okay.
So I think उस journey में हमने शुरुआत की है in the last 6 months. Yes, investors may want to time it a little better, use it to plan their investments along the way. You could get some, moderations in between. But I think it is still a space which has a lot of potential in it to deliver. And I am particularly very excited about the small and mid cap space for the coming few years.
All right. Sure. Thank you so much. So, I mean, I think we can confidently say कि अभी small caps overvalued नहीं हैं. So, we as investors don't have to worry.
देखिए, वैल्यूएशन में तो जैसे मैंने कहा, एक्चुअली अगर हम वैल्यूएशन के चार्ट्स हमारे प्रेजेंटेशंस वगैरह में कैरी करते हैं, यू विल प्रॉब्ली सी इट एज वेल। वो ऐसा कोई यूफोरिक scenario दिख नहीं रहा है। I agree that there are certain pockets. Some mid caps have done very well. They've gone up quite sharply in the last some time. They've got re-rated, but it doesn't end there. It is not कि वो हो गया तो मतलब there are no other opportunities. The market is getting broader. New investment avenues are emerging. New IPOs are also coming. In fact, IPOs में भी एक ट्रेंड दिखाई दे रही है जो तो आप अगर 21 और 22 कैलेंडर ईयर्स की 2021 और 2022 में देखें तो यू सॉ lot more large cap IPOs come into play.
Yeah.
23 and in the last some time, and in the pipeline which is likely to come, we see more mid cap and small cap IPOs lined up. So the
Okay.
landscape for IPOs is changing, and probably rightfully so, keeping in mind the opportunity which is unfolding in front of us. So I think there is a fair bit of room to go, and I think you also mentioned about certain funds, certain you know parts of the market uh, having are getting a little constrained in terms of their small cap investing
Yeah.
because of their size, which at one level obviously, I don't. I think I would have a similar situation if I were there in their position. But the point is that that does not necessarily mean that the investing opportunity is also constrained. I mean, those are constraints which are specific to those particular AMCs or those particular vehicles कि उनकी साइज एक ऐसे दर पे पहुंच गई है जहाँ पे मतलब फॉर देम दे हैव टू थिंक डिफरेंटली. But does it mean that other vehicles cannot do well, or other vehicles cannot pick up the slack from there and take advantage of the opportunity? I don't really think so. So
Okay.
uh, that should not be viewed as an upper limit or a cap to the potential of small cap investing in the market.
थैंक यू सो मच। सो नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन। आई थिंक ये बहुत ज़रूरी क्वेश्चन है, क्योंकि एक जो चीज़ हम बोलते हैं कि म्यूचुअल फंड्स में यू गेट द पावर ऑफ कंपाउंडिंग, लेकिन बहुत सारे लोग ये विश्वास रखते हैं कि इक्विटी फंड्स में क्योंकि हमें फिक्स्ड रिटर्न्स नहीं मिलते हैं, हमें पावर ऑफ कंपाउंडिंग का बेनिफिट भी नहीं मिलता है। अ सिंपल फैक्ट कि अगर इंटरेस्ट नहीं कमाए तो इंटरेस्ट के ऊपर इंटरेस्ट आप कैसे कमाएंगे, राइट? लेकिन आपके ओपिनियन में इक्विटी फंड्स, can equity funds give the power of compounding, despite the fluctuating returns that we get?
नहीं, यहाँ पे नम्रता जी कैन की बात ही नहीं है। इनफैक्ट वी हैव equity markets the world over. India is no different, has demonstrated over decades and centuries that they are able to compound wealth and compound at a very very attractive pace, not just in developing markets but even in developed markets even today. So uh, equity investing at one level is, if you think a little deeper, is about investing in businesses, right? It is
Yeah,
not just investing in a stock. The stock is just the mechanism or the way or the tool to invest, but what you are basically investing is in the underlying business.
yeah,
And businesses are at one level the only organism which actually grows over a period of time. Okay. So it is quite natural that with the growth of that organization, there will be the wealth also will also grow,
yeah,
and will compound at a certain pace. So I think it is a proven fact. Of course, there are kuch businesses which do not do well, and over a period of time they diminish or maybe even completely go out of the radar. But in general, they are growing organisms,
yeah,
and they have to necessarily, or the compounding effect comes from uh, you know earnings growth is one, but उसमें और एक lever is the valuation lever, which adds to the impact of compounding, and adds to the compounding of returns over a period of time. So if you buy something which is reasonable, then the equity market is the only place where valuations can move from one extreme to another. And if you identify them at the right extreme, which is basically at the bottoms, or
bottoms,
at
right?
valuations which are reasonable, and you wait for those extremes to occur, तो उस जर्नी में आपको न केवल अर्निंग्स की कंपाउंडिंग मिलती है, बट आपको वैल्यूएशन का भी अपसाइड मिलता है, और समटाइम्स द वैल्यूएशन अपसाइड एक्चुअली ड्राइव्स अ लॉट ऑफ द कंपाउंडिंग, क्योंकि बियॉन्ड द पॉइंट बिजनेसेस कैन कंपाउंड एंड मे बी 10, 15, 20, 25% for
Sure.
some years, but market multiples can move from 10 multiple, 10p multiple to 50, 70, 80, maybe, so uska jo impact hai, that is far more pronounced in general. So but it is a it goes without saying that that's the I think we all have been taught the power of compounding, and compounding in general as a mathematical concept
Yeah,
in schools and colleges, and that's how we've learned it. We've all learned it in our maths classes. But I think the one place where it clearly manifests itself very very clearly is in business, and then even more so when you talk about equity markets.
sure. And I think for all our investors, ये भी हम शायद बोल सकते हैं कि कंपाउंडिंग इफेक्ट जो है बेटर रहता है जैसे जैसे आपका टाइम होराइजन बढ़ता है, सो लॉन्गर द टाइम
बिल्कुल,
होराइजन।
बिल्कुल, absolutely. So yeah, you brought it out beautifully. That yeah, uh, obviously it is a time that you spend in the market and you allow that compounding to
Compounding,
take place. Then it makes a significant difference. So investing for 3 years versus investing for 5 or 10 years and 20 years makes is essentially what power of compounding is all about, right? Because that
absolutely.
geometric progression actually starts working a lot more strongly as you spend more and more time in it. So
Sure.
clearly, that's something that is a natural outcome. It compels you to actually become a longer term investor, because only if you turn into a longer term investor will you allow that power of compounding to take effect.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will not play out.
Sure. ओके, सो आई थिंक इन्वेस्टर्स जो है ना आजकल दे आर लाइक अभिमन्यु, राइट? हमने ये तो क्रैक कर लिया है इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हेन वी शुड एंटर द इक्विटी मार्केट्स, लेकिन वी फाइंड इट डिफिकल्ट टू एग्जिट द इक्विटी मार्केट्स बिकॉज वी डोंट अंडरस्टैंड कि हमें कब एग्जिट करना चाहिए। सो जस्ट अ सिंपल क्वेश्चन अराउंड इट, अगर हम देखें तो एस आई पी इनफ्लोज जो है करीब 15,000 करोड़ को एक्सीड किया था इन द मंथ ऑफ जुलाई 2023 अकॉर्डिंग टू एम्फी डेटा। लेकिन जो एंडिंग फेस है ऑफ एन एस आई पी इज एक्सट्रीमली क्रूशियल इन टर्म्स ऑफ जो आप इंटायर रिटर्न आपका एक्सपीरियंस है वो बहुत अच्छा रहता है टुवर्ड्स द एंड बिकॉज ऑफ ऑब्वियसली इरिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द रुपी कॉस्ट एवरेजिंग इफेक्ट दैट वी हैव। तो आपके हिसाब से इन योर ओपिनियन एज एन इन्वेस्टर क्या हमें वेट करना चाहिए टिल द टाइम आई एम गोइंग टू अचीव माई फाइनेंशियल गोल, या फिर मेरा एग्जिट स्ट्रैटेजी कैसा होना चाहिए फ्रॉम एन एस आई पी?
I think today for young investors, and particularly bulk of the investors who are there today, and I'm
Yeah,
assuming that there are obviously, we talked about the population profile and the demographic profile. We have a lot of new young investors who are coming in to the fold, and और भी ज़्यादा आएंगे over a period of time. I think the journey is still, like as I said, the investing journey in India has just begun.
yeah,
In fact, the economy itself, as we are talking, we are into the next journey where 20, 30 years from now, we will probably be among the top two or three economies of the world, or maybe even
sure,
the top economy of the world. So I think there is nothing like a 5 year SIP or a 10 year SIP right now. I mean, we have to talk in terms of decadal SIPs, if at all, because that is the journey that we have in front of us to cover. And, uh, uh, you know, uh, so it's a long way off, is essentially what I'm trying to say. Therefore, I've never thought of SIPs from an exit perspective. There are market cycles, and I agree that markets go from one extreme to another at times, and then they corrections आते हैं बीच में. But that doesn't mean that you have to start timing your SIPs as well. I think that part is probably left to the professional managers who are managing the underlying strategies. If they want to do it, they will do it on your behalf. आपको तो मतलब जर्नी में बने रहना है. And in fact, maybe you can, what you can do is that if at all you are आपके पास अगर tools है, और if you have that ability to do so and the right advisors, you can calibrate your SIPs at certain points in time, and make it more beneficial to you. So if you see that the markets are somewhat frothy and valuations भी ऊपर है, कुछ challenges है वगैरह वगैरह, so you can probably, instead of you being a 5 year SIP, it can become a 2 year SIP or a 1 year SIP. You can do the reverse as well. I mean, you can accelerate your SIPs at the time when actually you are seeing the markets not doing anything. जैसे कि last year was a good opportunity when not much was happening in the market. Again, as I said, it's the when markets are not doing much, that is a better time to invest, not just in small caps alone, but even otherwise. So you can calibrate your SIPs, but it is nothing. Okay, you started in 23, and I think you should be done by 2030. I think we are looking at this compounding primarily from the benefit of beating inflation, right? And not just beating inflation, but creating wealth, not just from the point of view of meeting your expenses. I think you should you should be able to reach a stage where you financially liberalize to the extent that आपको
sure.
शायद काम करने की जरूरत ना पड़े. Your money should work for yourself.
Sure. So just an add-on to that question. Okay, so I mean, what I was trying to say was, मान लीजिए मैं 2023 में मेरा बच्चा पढ़ने के लिए जा रहा है और मैं उसकी पढ़ाई के लिए पैसा इन्वेस्ट कर रही थी, तो क्या मुझे 2023 में सारा पैसा निकालना चाहिए या फिर मुझे 2020 से थोड़ा शिफ्ट कर देना चाहिए? बिकॉज अगर मान लीजिए 2023 में मार्केट गिरती है, तो मैंने जो भी रिटर्न्स बनाए थे, दे आर गॉन इन जस्ट 1 year बिकॉज ऑफ अ मार्केट क्रैश इन द year that I'm achieving a financial goal.
But I think, in my sense is, I mean, if you're already a 20 year SIP investor, 2003 to
Sure.
2023, I think even if you get a 20% correction from that 23 levels,
You would
you
have
will be
still made
still
money.
far better off, because आपका effect of compounding over that 20 years would have taken you from one level. That is exactly what happens to stocks. It will happen to mutual funds also, because when you bought it so early and you stayed with it for such a long period of time, आपको
Sure.
मतलब you won't even remember as to what price you bought it in 2003. It will not, मायने भी नहीं रखेगा आपके लिए. So
Fair.
but yes, I mean, if you bought it in 2003 and you start thinking about it in terms of what to do with it in 2007, there's quite a chance that you can lose 30-40% of what you already made quite easily,
Sure.
with a 10% fall in the market also from there. But over horizons of 10, 15, 20 years, I think that impact diminishes significantly, not and therefore its relevance continues to erode. You know.
फेयर एनफ, ठीक है, अंडरस्टूड। ओके, सो नाउ आई थिंक बहुत सारे लोग जो है ना, दे जस्ट वेटिंग कि कब मार्केट करेक्शन हो और मैं इक्विटीज़ में इन्वेस्ट करूँ। हम सब जानते हैं कि एस आई पीज़ के लिए हम कभी भी इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं इरिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द मार्केट कंडीशन। लेकिन आपकी ओपिनियन में अगर हम हाइब्रिड फंड्स की बात करें, is this a good time to invest in hybrid funds? और हाउ इम्पोर्टेंट इज टाइमिंग द मार्केट? क्योंकि अगर हमें मान लीजिए हम अपना ओवरऑल पोर्टफोलियो का रिटर्न देखें, तो क्या मार्केट टाइमिंग ज़रूरी होता है? और जो हाइब्रिड फंड्स होते हैं वो इस सिचुएशन में हम कैसे हैंडल कर सकते हैं?
So, even during my own investing tenure and my experience over these good number of years, I have realized that uh, timing the market obviously is not very productive and relevant, and many people are not even able to do it well. Most of us will probably not be able to do it well.
Sure.
The other thing what we can probably do, या शायद थोड़ा relevance ज़्यादा रहता है, is timing stocks. uh,
Okay.
टाइमिंग कंपनीज, टाइमिंग विच स्टॉक्स टू बाय एट व्हाट स्टेज, वो एक शायद is more productive than trying to time the market. Now timing stocks is not necessarily something which you know you, uh, uh, let's say non-professional investors need to do at their end. Okay, that can be left to the professionals or the managers who are managing the money, of fund managers like us, or mutual fund houses, or whatever vehicles they invest in. uh, so I think the question of timing the market probably is irrelevant. Well, I think it doesn't serve the purpose, especially if you're in an SIP mode. In fact, timing the market typically is difficult because there is an impact of psychology in the market. And
Okay.
आप जब markets are doing well, you try to do more and more of the same thing and try to increase your SIPs and try to increase your commitments, because that's how the psychology plays out in the market at that point.
Sure.
और जैसे मैंने कहा, which may not necessarily be the right thing to do. At that point in time, you should either be holding on to what you're already doing, or maybe if you want, you can recalibrate. But when the timing is bad and things, or rather when timing, when the market is not doing well, I think at that time psychology will not permit you, because there will be so much of negativity around you. But that is
Sure.
exactly the time when you should be, in fact, doubling up on your SIPs and increasing your commitments to the market. So, आपको timing, you will never get it right, because it will always work against you. I think the only other thing which is possible is timing individual businesses, and I think that is best left to professional managers who are managing the underlying portfolios. You can hope that the managers will do a good job of timing companies at the right level, at right time, and right opportunity, so as to be able to maximize your returns along the way.
Sure. Okay. How about hybrid funds? We were talking about hybrid
Oh
funds in
yeah.
this question.
Yeah, so at this stage of the market, look, there were time, hybrids do serve a purpose at times when you get into a situation where either you see a lot more uncertainties in front of you, or probably you see a situation where valuations are really overextended, or it might be the specific profile of that investor. That look, he's not necessarily an investor who wants to take significant amount of risk. So low risk, moderate risk appetite investors can do hybrid funds at any point in time. It doesn't matter. For
Okay.
other investors, it is more about trying to be opportunistic. कि आपके पास already you have an existing set of funds which are pure equity या those kind of strategies, चाहे वो mid cap हो, large cap हो. But you want to probably move from them to a low risk mode in order to take advantage of the market. So you're not able to exactly time the market, uh, and you may not be good at it. You do also want to completely exit your equity allocation, तो आप hybrid fund में चले जाते हो कि at least I will compound, but I will compound at a somewhat uh, lesser
Lesser.
rate,
Yeah.
and I will still maintain my footprint in the market. I will still reserve the right कि कभी मुझे लगता है कि once again the opportunity is correct, I will move back from the hybrid fund to the regular fund. So it's more like a parking place for other kinds of investors. But for moderate risk investors, um, who are not necessarily concerned as much about how much they are outperforming the benchmark,
Okay.
but they are more about okay, can I beat inflation by a somewhat some margin, so as to be able to meet my requirements.
Understood.
I think for them, on a continuing basis, a dynamic fund or a balanced advantage fund or those kind of strategies should be part of their overall investment portfolio.
Fair enough. Okay. So now I think one of the themes that is very exciting is infrastructure as a theme. इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स ने जो है पिछले एक साल में करीब 29% रिटर्न दिया है। तो
जी.
आपके ओपिनियन में ये कैटेगरी एक इन्वेस्टर के पोर्टफोलियो के लिए कितनी ज़रूरी है? एंड आई थिंक एज इन्वेस्टर्स शायद हम टेम्प्टेड भी होंगे ना, बिकॉज अगर हम देखें न्यूज़ देखें तो गवर्नमेंट इज प्लानिंग टू स्पेंड क्लोज टू 10 लाख करोड़ ऑन इंफ्रा डेवलपमेंट। तो हमें भी ये लगता है ना कि हम भी इस ग्रोथ का हिस्सा बन जाते हैं, तो हम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं। तो वो इन जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स होते हैं वो एक इन्वेस्टर के पोर्टफोलियो के लिए कितना ज़रूरी होते हैं?
नहीं, देखिए, मैं कहूँगा कि सी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड इज अ थीमेटिक फंड. It is a it has its own nuances. It has got its own features. It has got its own challenges also. Infrastructure is something which is deeply cyclical, can be deeply cyclical, and it has been seen in the past on many occasions. It is very important to actually, once again, find the right timing for somebody who wants to take exposure to the infrastructure space. uh, India may, of course, that opportunity is been around for a very long period of time, but unfortunately we found it difficult in our journey as a nation to be able to do enough justice to that space. But for the first time in the last many years, and I would say it's almost the last good decent infrastructure cycle that we saw as a country was between 2004 and 2008. So it's been 15
ओके।
years since we saw a good cycle. And वो भी जो cycle हमने देखी थी was under the global influence. At that point in time, the cycle was good for almost every part of the world. And we were also part of that wave. Abhi, our infrastructure cycle will be our own, because we are on a different journey. As we discussed, we are a different economy. We are growing the fastest growing economy in the world. We need our most important thing for us to sustain our growth. Infrastructure is now the most important thing. I mean, we cannot afford not to build our infrastructure now. It This will be now or never. That is a kind of situation that we are in. The good news is that we have all the elements which are required for a good, strong infrastructure cycle to unfold in India. It's already started to unfold in my view. हम देख भी रहे हैं. हम आपने खुद ने कहा कि we're seeing a lot of excitement, and we're seeing a lot of live changes to our infrastructure. We are experiencing it in our own lives, चाहे वो rural areas में हो या चाहे वो urban areas में हो. And the beauty is also that there's a long way to go. मतलब हम देखते हैं कि we have a lot to achieve. And lastly, there is a all the elements which are required, चाहे वो corporates की strength हो या banks की strength हो या government की policies हो, all those are aligned. Even global outlook or global circumstances are favoring us at this stage in order to build our infrastructure in the country. So I think it is, मेरे हिसाब से, this is a wave, this is a cycle which has just begun. 1 डेढ़ साल से मुझे लगता है, जब से कोविड खत्म हुआ है, तब से मुझे लगता है कि दिस साइकिल हैज़ बीन in progress. But we've seen that these cycles can be pretty long. India desperately needs it. Countries like China have had this cycle go on for maybe 10, 15
Yeah,
years or maybe even
decade.
more. So
Yeah,
we are clearly at the very, and it's a very rewarding cycle for investors if you time it well, and if you आपने अगर अच्छी मौके पे आपने उसकी शुरुआत की है, एंड यू सिट थ्रू इट. वी सीन झलक दिखाने के लिए, जैसे मैं कहूँगा कि 2004 और 8 के बीच में हमने जो साइकिल देखी, विच वाज वन साइकिल बट नॉट इनफ, नोवेयर क्लोज टू एडिक्वेट.
sure.
उसी दौरान एक्चुअली निफ्टी कंपाउंडेड अर्निंग्स एट अबाउट 25%, और निफ्टी की रिटर्न उस समय 30% से कंपाउंड हुई थी, 32% से कंपाउंड हुई थी फॉर 4-5 साल लगातार. लेकिन उसी दौरान इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इंडेक्स एंड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स कंपाउंडेड एट anywhere close to 50-60%, more than twice what Nifty compounded at. So it just tells you that when you get the space correct, and you get the equation right, and you get the timing right, it can be a very rewarding experience. It is important, however, कि वो strategies को अच्छी तरह manage करा जाए.
Okay.
And I think we, at one level, I'm proud to say that Invesco India Infrastructure Fund, we have a fund which has been in existence for the last 14-15 years. We've seen all kinds of cycles, and it has done exceedingly well for itself as an infrastructure fund. At times, for longer durations, even outperforming the Nifty. So I think the way you conduct this fund is also very important. I don't want to get into details of that, but क्योंकि मैंने कहा कि because it is a difficult strategy, it is not an easy play. It has to be done in a certain manner, right manner, and I think we have been able to do that quite successfully.
सो आई थिंक जस्ट फॉर द बेनिफिट ऑफ इन्वेस्टर्स आई थिंक वी कैन कॉन्फिडेंटली से कि अगर आपके पोर्टफोलियो में आप 10-15-20% थीमेटिक या सेक्टरल एक्सपोजर चाहते हैं तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड इज one of the categories you can definitely consider in your portfolio. Yes, because as Sir said, we are
And
expecting to see.
definitely, it's a satellite. It can be. It has been up until now a satellite strategy for many investors. I
Yeah.
think it might even be time to move it to mainstream.
Okay.
Just as we do allocation to mid cap, small cap, large cap, multi cap kind of strategies, and make
Right.
4 or 5. I think this is one important thematic strategy which needs to find its proper place in your investment
Core portfolio.
portfolio.
ओके सो ताहिर हम ना बहुत सारे जब इन्वेस्टर्स के साथ बात करते हैं इन जनरल इन्वेस्टमेंट वर्ल्ड में बहुत सारे थंब रूल्स होते हैं राइट तो पर्सनल फाइनेंस में बहुत सारे थंब रूल्स फॉलो किए जाते हैं एक जो ऐसा थंब रूल है विच इज़ हमें कितना एलोकेशन एक्विटी में करना चाहिए और उसके लिए भी फॉलो सिंपल थंब रूल कॉल 100 माइनस एज इज़ योर इन्वेस्टमेंट इन परसेंटेज इन्वेस्टमेंट इन एक्विटीज़ तो आपके ओपिनियन में ऑफ कोर्स ये थंब रूल तो है ही लेकिन इसके अलावा और क्या फैक्टर्स हमें कंसिडर करने चाहिए बिसाइड्स द एज टू डिसाइड कि एक इन्वेस्टर का एक्विटीज़ में कितना एक्सपोजर होना चाहिए और ये जो थंब रूल्स होते हैं आर दे रियली रेलिवेंट मतलब क्या हम इन थंब रूल्स को ब्लाइंडली फॉलो कर सकते हैं एज इन्वेस्टर्स सो जस्ट हेल्प अस अंडरस्टैंड दिस
But I have not somehow I have not thought of this equity allocation in that format. Uh, Maybe I'm too close to the equity market, so that is the reason why I've not been able to think in that manner.
या
But my advice, at least, would be that yes, I mean this thumb rule and this principle may be a good starting point, or perhaps it might be one of the ways to do it. But I think it is important to हर एक के लिए ये भी इम्पोर्टेंट है कि आप ये सोचें कि वेयर आर यू इन योर कंट्रीज लाइफ साइकिल इकोनॉमिक जर्नी डेवलपमेंट जर्नी एंड particularly compared to the rest of the world. And I think agar if you have been able to think rightly about that, and if you've understood that correctly, I don't think age is also therefore a barrier for one to be cautious about equity investing. If, let's say, you are past a certain age, uh, I don't. I mean, I agree that there is a certain level of volatility which comes about in equity markets, but I think if you are past a certain age, I'm assuming that you are also past some of your important commitments.
या
It's important. Most important thing, if I were to say, is to start early. Uh, uh, Many a times I mean, we still as investors. Uh, do not start early enough. It is now that trend has started to change, especially in the last 3 4 years when we've seen that the younger a lot of the population and the age brackets are coming into equity markets. They are opening their own demat accounts. They are doing their own
श्योर
investing and creating their own portfolios. So that's a nice sign and a very good sign. It should be encouraged. It should go on even further, because once you have started early, then I think uh, uh, by the time you have spent 20 25 years doing this, and you are maybe at the age of, let's say, you have achieved middle age, I think you will not necessarily have that compulsion that, look, I cannot bear uh, the volatility of the markets anymore. At that time, your ability to bear the market volatility will be significantly higher. So, in the economic journey of of a country and on its market, I think today we are at a stage where age should not be a barrier to investing. Even I would recommend for even people who are of a decent age or cross the middle age, should look at investing as a equity investing in particular, or equity allocation in particular, very consciously and very, you know uh, in a responsible manner, because uh, 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 some volatility apart, the trend is generally upward. And we talked about the power of compounding. And even if you were to compound from a middle age for a period of 10 years or so, your returns could be of a completely different order, and meet all your requirements. So I don't think age is a very good criteria to go by as far as equity investing is concerned.
Okay, fair enough. All right. सो आई थिंक हम हमेशा गोल बेस्ड प्लानिंग की बात करते हैं एंड वी ऑलवेज सेइंग दैट हर इंसान के अलग अलग गोल्स होते हैं एंड वन ऑफ द वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट गोल्स फॉर एवरी इंडिविजुअल इज फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम. हम चाहते हैं कि हम इन्वेस्टमेंट के जरिए फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम को जल्दी अचीव कर लें. तो क्वेश्चन नंबर वन, आप हमारे व्यूअर्स को ये समझाइए कि फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम होता क्या है. एंड क्वेश्चन नंबर टू, प्लीज हेल्प अस अंडरस्टैंड कि हम इक्विटी फंड्स में कौन सी कैटेगरीज में इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं पोस्ट रिटायरमेंट.
So, at a very philosophical level, I think uh, financial freedom to me is like as I said, I mean, if my money works for myself, that is the ultimate level of financial freedom
Sure.
that you would have achieved, and you don't necessarily therefore need to think as to how will you meet your uh, day-to-day expenses from now for the next good number of years. Uh, so financial freedom achieve karne ke liye, like as I said, you need to start early, and it doesn't matter with what amount, small amounts or you start with. And that is the reason why actually is, when you have SIP investments which can be done with what, a minimum $100. I don't know what is the number
Yeah.
these days. So
But generally it's 500, but yeah, many AMCs do have
500,
100.
whatever, but even that is not a number which is out of the reach of
Sure.
many
Yeah.
people in the country today.
Yeah.
So I think it is very important that you start as early as possible. You inculcate that education, that understanding about what this means, and I think that is where the equity culture is different in developed markets and capitalist economies, especially in the US and few others, compared to where it is in other parts of the world. So the freedom will be achieved depending upon how early you start. Uh, and I think, as I said, I mean, your job or your work cannot be your compounding machine unless you are running a business of your own.
Yeah.
The compounding will only happen if you are part of a business or if you have invested in a business, because that is the only mechanism through which you can achieve that compounding. And compounding is the only way to financial freedom. Uh, uh, so I think, yeah, I would say that start early, stay invested, make your investment horizons reasonably long. That's what is the plain and simple advice which I would leave you with.
Sure. And which categories of mutual funds for investors after retirement?
Uh, like as I said, I mean, if you get into a mode which is about a moderate risk and moderate return, post retirement, obviously you would want to look at certain balanced advantage category of funds or low risk strategies of that nature. Maybe at that point in time, even something like certain flexi cap strategies could serve your purpose. Or even if you were to probably look at something which is plain and as stable as a large cap category, that also within the equity basket should be quite appropriate, especially if you're looking at post retirement. There are of the balanced advantage, you also have a family of that family, you also have strategies like an equity savings fund or an equity and bond fund. These are also offshoots of that same category. So there are a fair bit of options which are available, at least on the equity side or the quasi equity side or the blend side, which are available for post retirement individuals.
परफेक्ट, ठीक है. सो नाउ ताहिर, अगर हम देखें कि इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स ने 66% ऑफ इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स ने जो है बेंचमार्क को अंडर परफॉर्म किया है इन अ 3 ईयर टाइम होराइजन. लेकिन ऑफ कोर्स इक्विटी स्कीम्स ने भले ही डबल डिजिट रिटर्न्स दिए हों, बट देव स्टिल फेल टू आउट परफॉर्म द बेंचमार्क. तो आपके ओपिनियन में जब हम इक्विटी फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं, तो हाउ इम्पोर्टेंट इज इट कि वो जो इक्विटी फंड है वो बेंचमार्क को बीट करे.
देखिए, for large benchmarks, the more prominent benchmarks such as the Nifty or the BSE 500 or something like that, I think uh, you might still want to consider as to how your returns are faring versus the benchmark. Benchmark investing is relevant if at all you have the alternative of investing in that benchmark. अगर आप एक फंड सोच रहे हैं versus the benchmark, uh, then you should have that ability to invest in that benchmark also. Otherwise, what is the point in comparing that with this one? Because in any case, you are not going to be in a position to invest in that particular benchmark. सो अगर निफ्टी एज अ बेंचमार्क है, जो लार्ज कैप रिलेटेड बेंचमार्क्स है, उनके लिए मतलब वी हैव अंडरलाइंग ईटीएफ्स एंड ऑल दोस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स व्हिच आर अवेलेबल एज alternatives. So I think comparing some of the large cap type of strategies uh, versus the benchmark makes relevant sense. Okay, your fund did not perform, and I had I invested in the benchmark, I would have probably get at least got I would have got somewhat better returns. But otherwise, I don't. For other kinds of funds where you don't really have that option to invest in a small cap benchmark, uh, there's no point in comparing as to how did your fund do vis-a-vis the benchmark. The benchmark is meant to probably be more for the professional investors who are managing those strategies, and they are looking at
Okay.
the benchmark on a day in and day out basis. Somewhat they are compelled to do so by regulations, by the industry, by the peers, etc. But I think if you think about investing by itself on its own and leave benchmarks aside, I think it should map up with more than mapping it with underlying benchmarks, etc. You map it up with your own um, return expectations,
Sure.
your own financial requirements, your own benchmark it to when you want to achieve your financial freedom. What are those thresholds that you are setting yourself? Do you want to achieve financial freedom at the age of 30 or at 40 or 60? That should actually drive
Sure.
what your choice of product should be, because benchmark performances underlying, you mentioned about that statistic of 66% of the bench of the funds having underperformed the benchmark. But the issue is that benchmarks also have changed over time, you know. And in 2018, we had a very prominent change for the industry as a whole. 2020, we had a very 21, rather, we had a very important regulatory change, which wherein fund managers had no choice but to change their benchmarks. So what they have done with respect to the benchmark for the last 10, 15 years prior to that suddenly evaporated, and you had to align yourself to a completely new benchmark. Uh, so I'm not saying that we should therefore underperform benchmarks, but I'm just saying that beyond a point, focusing too much on that will take you away from your financial planning goals, from your broader picture of participating in the economy, compounding. Being part of the market is the first challenge that you have to overcome. Are you part of the market? Are you invested? Are you invested enough? Do you have your exposures enough? Do you have your allocations right? Are you doing your SIPs diligently? Those
Sure.
considerations are a lot more important, whether instead of thinking a lot about whether you're
Right.
underperforming or overperforming the benchmark.
Sure. Okay. So I think just continuing our conversation where आपने थोड़ा you spoke about ETFs and अगर आप इंडेक्स फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करें तो आप वरी करेंगे बेंचमार्क के बारे में. सो जो इंडेक्स फंड्स होते हैं देर ऑब्वियसली लो कॉस्ट एंड उन्होंने काफ़ी अच्छे रिटर्न्स भी बनाए हैं इन द रीसेंट मार्केट रैली. तो आपकी ओपिनियन में एक इंडेक्स फंड में अगर मुझे इन्वेस्ट करना है, डज इट एनेबल पोर्टफोलियो डाइवर्सिफिकेशन?
Uh, Yes, it does. I mean, they are. See, I think uh, index funds, ETFs, passives, all that family will have its place in the sun, and they will also uh, become relevant as parts of the investment basket. Uh, and they will. They have their own relevance, but uh, uh, I don't think they are the be all and end all either. Because uh, especially once again, I'm coming back to India as an economy in its life cycle and where we are in our growth curve. Um, to me, it appears that we have simply a lot of opportunities, active opportunities, which are available. So, and there is enough and more room for one to manage funds actively, take active bets, and generate active returns, and compound maybe at a rate faster. So I think both can coexist. They can find a place because they are low cost vehicles. They give you an ability to uh, 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 expose yourself to a certain strand of investing, type of investing. But they have their own set of challenges as well, because they are obviously benchmarked. So The thing is that they will also be uh, uh, at the mercy of the underlying benchmarks. They can have their own volatilities. If there are components of the benchmark which don't do well, then they are impacted, and we've seen that on various occasions in the past, when certain components of the indices become too large and they undergo some pressure. Then index funds have also found it difficult to. Active funds have actually beaten index funds during that period of time, that phase, despite the fact that they have higher costs.
True.
So I think both will have a place. It is like carving out a satellite for yourself, just like you do certain other thematic strategies and represent them as part of the portfolio. I think this is a good vehicle to also have, especially for moderate risk investors.
All right. Okay. So that now tell us a little bit about how you select your equity funds. तो अगर आपको अपने portfolio को अभी design करना है, तो आप कौन से equity funds में invest करेंगे? Because I think the biggest challenge for most investors is कि वो सही set of funds को identify नहीं कर पाते अपने portfolio के लिए, and आप क्या parameters consider करेंगे while you are picking funds for yourself?
तो देखिए, मैं if I were to do it for myself, and the way I've done it for myself is that I don't diversify too much. One is
Okay.
that, I'm not thinking in terms of 10 or 15 odd products in my portfolio. Maybe three, five, maybe seven at best. Five to seven, I think, is a good coverage, good set of uh, 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 coverage to have, actually, to encompass all your requirements. There are certain different aspects of the market. There are these large stable enterprises that you want to be a part of. You also want to be a part of the emerging India. So I can understand that you want to be in certain large cap oriented strategies and certain mid or small cap oriented strategies. But selecting one or two out of that and one or two out of the other, and a couple of satellite strategies or thematic funds, so creating a basket of 6 to 7 strategies, I think, is good enough. उससे ज़्यादा करने में you're essentially complicating your life, and you're basically, I think, losing focus. Okay. And not to say the challenges that you will have in monitoring those investments that you
Yeah.
have over a period of time. So I think keeping things simple is the best way forward. Uh, have diversity, but not to the extent that it becomes unmanageable. And yeah, yeah, I think that's been my broad guiding principle. Uh, uh, but important thing is to stay committed to those funds, because uh, maybe spend enough time at the initial phases when you have to make your selection, whether you want to be with a particular style or with a particular fund manager of a particular house. I think those decisions you have to, scrutiny, etc., has to be done at the very initial stages. The more time you spend at that time, it is better. But then once you have done with that scrutiny and you have come up with your choices, I think it is better to then run with them through thick and thin, because funds will have their own phases. There will be times when different funds will do uh, differently, based on the style of the fund, based on the mandate of the fund. Sometimes growth strategies will do well, sometimes value strategies will do well, and so on and so
Sure.
forth. Sometimes mid cap, sometimes small. So I think if you've represented that mix properly, then you just have to make sure that you stay committed to it, if not forever, but at least for a reasonable length of time, for you to get the benefit of that fund uh, for yourself.
So, just an add on to this question, क्या आप हमें बता सकते हैं कि वो 5 या 6 कैटेगरीज जिनकी आप बात करें वो कौन सी कैटेगरीज होनी चाहिए?
So today, if I were to think of it, as I said, mid cap and small cap is clearly an opportunity to,
Sure.
you can make a selection in that
Yes.
bucket. I would make a selection in one of the flexi cap categories. I'm treating flexi cap, multi cap, large and mid cap as one family of funds.
Diversified
So
funds. Diversified.
yeah, so you diversified fund. So basically, you select one or maybe two products from that category. I like, as I said, would be, I'm very enthusiastic, and I see very I'm very positive on this whole investment cycle which is unfolding in front of us. So strategies which are tuned to that, either manufacturing oriented funds or infrastructure oriented funds, make a lot of sense as one
Sure.
thing that you can run for at least the next five years, if not more.
Okay.
I would at one level also, maybe it might not be it might not be very clear in the minds of investors, but the other one cycle which typically keeps uh, unfolding in the market from time to time is the growth versus value cycle.
Yeah.
uh, and markets go through phases of growth investing and value investing. So I think if an investor can represent a value strategy also in his portfolio alongside growth. Growth, of course, will dominate and will be predominant for all of us. But value strategies also need to be adequately represented because they provide you that counter-cyclical buffer at times. So if you want to create a somewhat better configuration, I would propose that you have one or maybe two value-oriented strategies also in your mix. So if you can select 5 6 funds which by and large cover these aspects of the market, I think you don't need to do anything more than that. You are more or less sorted.
ओके, परफेक्ट। सो ताहिर, आप जो है मार्केट में बहुत सालों से, मे बी डेकेड से इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं, तो आपकी ऐसी कुछ स्पेसिफिक लर्निंग्स हैं जो चाहें, जो आप हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स को बता सकते हैं?
No, like as I said, uh, obviously there are plenty of them. Uh, all of it doesn't come to my mind at this stage, but I mean, I've observed that there is obviously a uh, investing is not just a science. There is a lot of art.
या,
Okay, and uh, there are very simple rules to it. जो आपको ओबे करने हैं, और वो आपके लिए नए भी नहीं है, मतलब इन द सेंस इट इज ऑल एट सम लेवल इट इज वेरी कॉमन सेंसिकल. But important thing is it's not only science, a lot of art and a lot of uh, psychology behind it. So you have uh, to be a good investor, you also have to be very balanced in your mind. You can't take rash decisions. You shouldn't listen to a lot of too much to experts like us beyond a particular point. I think some keep your decisions as simple as possible, and invest for the long term. Diversify adequately. Don't do over diversification. Uh, uh, Keep a longer picture in mind. You will have ups and downs no matter whatever you do. आप कुछ भी कर लो, you will confront bad times in the market, or bad stocks, or bad investment choices that you can't avoid. The best of investors have gone through it. One thing that I clearly comes to my mind is manage your risks. Okay, you
या,
you should be aware as to how what is the kind of risk that you want to take for yourself at different stages of your life cycle. At different age, you are in a different position with regard to your risk exposures. So be cognizant of the risks that you're taking, especially when you're doing individual investing or creating your own
श्योर,
individual portfolios. So risk management comes first. Return management probably comes a little later. Uh, uh, so yeah, I think that is what guides our investment. Has guided me also over a period of time. We've tried to be a lot more conscious about risk as time has passed. We are developing more and more tools to give us good alerts. Our investment processes are being conducted in a way that it alerts us more to the risks than just to the return possibilities, for us to become better investors over time.
श्योर, परफेक्ट। सो जस्ट वन लास्ट क्वेश्चन, हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए कोई बुक रिकमेंडेशंस?
Plenty of them, but I would say more than books, uh, not just investment books. Read a lot of stuff on different topics, and not necessarily related to investing. Read about different sciences, because that those things help you even more in terms of not only identifying companies, but as how to conduct yourself, and what works, what doesn't work, because there are certain other laws of the market, or of the universe, not of the market, which the laws of the universe which also impact the markets in various ways. So try and develop more, try and take an interest in other disciplines, whether be it physics or whether be it biology or those types. Read a lot about psychology. You can always find a lot of books on investing. There are several stalwarts who have written. I found What I found very relevant at least in my formative years, was reading the letters to shareholders by Warren Buffett,
Okay.
which he regularly publishes. More than his books, I think there's a lot of wealth of information and learnings out of those letters to shareholders, and they come once in a year, and that carries a lot of wisdom. Um, uh, and Yeah, I mean, then there are these very famous books, One Up on Wall Street, and
Yeah.
good number of other titles which are there, which but I think read other disciplines. I think that is more important in my view,
Sure.
and that
Thank you
will
so much.
make you a somewhat different investor.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tahir. I mean, I think it was wonderful talking to you. You gave us a lot of perspective. So thank you so much for your time. And I do hope हमारे
My
viewers को
pleasure.
ये episode बहुत अच्छा लगा होगा. So thank you so much and
Thank you
take
very
care.
much
Thank
once
you.
again, Namrata, for having me, and thank you all of Groww to give me this, to have given me this opportunity. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Wow, what a wonderful conversation with Mr. Tahir. I'm sure आप सबको ये एपिसोड बहुत अच्छा लगा होगा and I'm sure you guys are waiting for the next one. तो क्विकली जो भी पॉइंट्स हमने डिस्कस किए वो मैं आपके लिए समराइज कर देती हूँ. तो सबसे पहले हमने ये डिस्कस किया कि काफी वेस्टर्न इकोनॉमीज जो इंडिया से काफी बड़ी हैं, वो भी 2008 के फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस की इम्पैक्ट से अभी तक नहीं निकल के आ पाई हैं. और इंडिया की जो इतनी यंग वर्किंग पॉपुलेशन है, क्या इसकी वजह से इंडिया कैन बिकम द थर्ड लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बाय 2029? तो मिस्टर ताहिर सेज कि ऑफ कोर्स इंडिया की जो यंग वर्किंग पॉपुलेशन है, जिसको हम डेमोग्राफिक डिविडेंड बोलते हैं, उसकी वजह से हमें एक कंपेटिटिव एज डेफिनेटली है, लेकिन इस एनर्जी को सही डायरेक्शन में चैनलाइज करना बहुत जरूरी है. देन वी आल्सो स्पोक अबाउट स्मॉल कैप फंड्स एंड द फैक्ट कि स्मॉल कैप फंड्स ने बहुत अच्छी परफॉर्मेंस दी है इन द रीसेंट पास्ट. एंड मिस्टर ताहिर सेज कि अगर आपको स्मॉल कैप फंड में इन्वेस्ट करना है तो आपकी रिस्क टॉलरेंस बहुत ज्यादा होनी चाहिए और आपका जो टाइम होराइजन है वो कम से कम 5 से 7 साल होना चाहिए फॉर यू टू अंडरस्टैंड द ट्रू पोटेंशियल ऑफ दिस इन्वेस्टमेंट. फिर हमने ये डिस्कस किया कि काफी लोग मानते हैं कि इक्विटी फंड्स में इंटरेस्ट नहीं मिलता है तो इसलिए कंपाउंडिंग बेनिफिट भी नहीं मिलता है. मिस्टर ताहिर सेज कि जब आप इक्विटी फंड्स में आप इन्वेस्ट करते हैं तो आपकी वेल्थ कंपाउंड होती है एट अ मच फास्टर रेट, क्योंकि इक्विटी फंड्स जो अच्छे बिजनेसेस में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं एंड कंपाउंडिंग कम्स फ्रॉम अर्निंग्स पोटेंशियल एंड वैल्यूएशन ग्रोथ ऑफ कंपनीज. लेकिन अगर आप इक्विटी फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं तो आपका टाइम होराइजन लॉन्ग टर्म होना चाहिए फॉर यू टू गेट द ट्रू बेनिफिट ऑफ कंपाउंडिंग. Then we also spoke about doing SIPs and equity mutual funds. And Mr. Tahir says कि अगर आप equity funds में invest करें तो सही टाइम या सबसे अच्छा टाइम तब होता है जब स्टॉक मार्केट अच्छा नहीं कर रही होती है. एंड अगर आपको SIPs करनी है तो टाइम होराइजन जो SIPs के लिए होना चाहिए वो कम से कम 10 से 15 साल होना चाहिए. फिर हमने थोड़ा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स के बारे में बात करी एंड मिस्टर ताहिर सेज कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है बहुत साइक्लिकल होता है और इसीलिए अगर आपको इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करना है तो टाइमिंग ऑफ द मार्केट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू टू गेट गुड रिटर्न्स. अगर हम इंडिया पर्सपेक्टिव से देखें तो अभी सारे एलिमेंट्स बिल्कुल सही जगह पे हैं फॉर अ गुड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर साइकिल और देखा जाए तो वर्ल्ड सिनेरियो भी इसको सपोर्ट कर रहा है. लेकिन अगर आप इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करना चाहते हैं तो वो आपके सैटेलाइट पोर्टफोलियो का हिस्सा बन सकते हैं. फिर हमने थोड़ा 100 माइनस एज वाले रूल के बारे में बात करी एंड हाउ इम्पोर्टेंट इज एज व्हेन इट कम्स टू इन्वेस्टिंग इन इक्विटीज. एंड मिस्टर ताहिर सेज कि एज जो है एक बैरियर नहीं होना चाहिए इक्विटीज में इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए, बिकॉज कम टू लुक एट कोई अगर मिडिल एज इन्वेस्टर भी है वो भी इक्विटीज में ज्यादा एक्सपोजर ले सकते हैं अगर उनके लाइफ के कमिटमेंट्स मेजर कमिटमेंट्स खत्म हो चुके हैं तो. फिर हमने मिस्टर ताहिर से ये डिस्कस किया कि हमारे म्यूचुअल फंड पोर्टफोलियो में कितने फंड्स होने चाहिए एंड इफ ही कैन हेल्प अस थ्रू हिज एग्जांपल. तो मिस्टर ताहिर सेज कि आपको 5 या 7 कैटेगरीज में इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, उससे ज्यादा नहीं. ही डजंट बिलीव इन ओवर डाइवर्सिफिकेशन. ही सेज कि अगर आपने बहुत सारे फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कर दिया तो आपको बहुत मुश्किल होगी टू मैनेज योर इन्वेस्टमेंट्स. ही ऑल्सो सेज कि अगर आपने एक बार एक इक्विटी फंड में इन्वेस्ट कर दिया है then you should stay invested in that fund for long term. फिर हमने मिस्टर ताहिर से इनके कुछ लर्निंग्स के बारे में पूछा एंड मिस्टर ताहिर सेज कि जो सबसे जरूरी चीज है वो ये है कि आपको अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स को सिंपल रखना चाहिए. यू शुड नॉट कॉम्प्लिकेट योर इन्वेस्टमेंट्स एंड एट द सेम टाइम जो पहला फोकस होना चाहिए वो होना चाहिए रिस्क मैनेजमेंट and then you should look at returns. So that was about it in this particular episode. I'm sure आप सबको ये episode बहुत अच्छा लगा होगा. Please do like this video, hit the share button and please do subscribe to the Groww Mutual Fund channel. Thank you so much for watching.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.